our hunger for AI and cloud computing will only increase. So these technologies we're adopting rather fast. Cloud computing, AI, and some immersion using digital twinning.
What is Nokia's technology vision for the future?
Because we play in the space of last mile wireless, we're market leaders in last mile wireline. My view is very simple. The world will need 6G. India is the largest service ops. It's also the largest R&D. We are number one in wireless, number one in optics, number one in core in the market. It's a very, very important market for us. It's a top 3 perpetually.
Welcome to this edition of nasscom BCG's India Means Innovation podcast. We're excited today to have as my guest a technologist, a foodie, and a truly global citizen, Nishant Batra, who is the Chief Strategy and Technology Officer for Nokia. Welcome, Nishant, to the podcast.
Very glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Wonderful. So we're sitting today at the Nokia offices in Gurgaon, the knowledge and services hub for India. Let's maybe kick off the conversation, Nishant, with a broader view of how you see the global telecom industry evolving in the context of technological advancements, and what major trends do you anticipate in the next decade?
One has to think of telecom in 2 different facets. There is tech that telecom uses, and there is tech that telecom provides. So if you look at, like every other industry, telecom feeds off tech like cloud computing. If you look at current telecommunication, let's say start with terrestrial telecommunication networks, they were all built very bespoke, very verticalized. More and more they're getting horizontalized, and cloud computing is pervasive for us as well. As such, you would see this in several industries, right? That's why you see huge cloud growth across the world. Another example, AI is also pervasive in telecom networks now. And when we talk about AI, we're really not talking about the generative aspects of AI, but more classic AI. And that is quite, prevalent in telecommunications. So we have been early adopters of that. And this will continue. So if you look at for until the rest of the decade, I think by the end of the decade, our hunger for AI and cloud computing will only increase. Uh, from cloud computing perspective, today we are dependent on central large clouds. More and more, this is moving towards the edge cloud, and we can have a longer debate what that edge cloud really means. But from an AI perspective, the classic AI hunger will not disappear, will only grow. For example, we talk about as we are defining standards for 6G, it's basically an AI-driven interface versus a rule-based interface that we have today, and so on and so forth. But we will also then adopt to generative AI aspects in telecommunications when it comes to use cases such as care, customer handling, etc., etc. And that's becoming more common now. But these 2 trends continue during the rest of the year. There is also a trend that we are also consumers and we also deliver is digital twinning. For example, digital twins to occur, you need to have very robust communications networks. But we are producing digital twins for our own consumption as well. So, case in point today, for example, when at Nokia we're shipping a product, we're shipping a router, for example, we ship it with a digital twin. So our customers then have an option to use the digital twin for fault analysis, etc. We will see these digital twins then become network wide. And essentially, somebody sitting remotely should be able to have a real time, quite transparent representation of a very complicated network somewhere else. So these technologies we're adopting rather fast. Cloud computing, AI, and some immersion using digital twinning. But then we are also at the same time, none of these 3 would be possible if there was no communications network.
Super. So, cloud computing, AI, digital twinning, and obviously the comms protocols to enable all that, right? So let's make it more applicable to what you see for Nokia. What is Nokia's technology vision for the future? And talk to me about what's literally around the corner, and then what's a decade out.
Nokia, we have a little bit of a unique situation and position in the comms world. We're not we're not, in one part of the network versus some of our competitors. We see basically, if I were to list out our competitors, the list would be more than 200, because we play in the space of last mile wireless. We're market leaders in last mile wireline. We're also providing edge routing, point to point optical, uh, you name it, right? And then huge presence in the software space as well. Lesser known that a lot of our patents are used in any possible device that is in your pocket right now. So if you're using an Apple, Samsung, Oppo, Vivo, it's likely they're using some of our tech, right? So from our perspective, when we look at something that's around the corner, I think for now, from a wireless standpoint, 5G in most parts of the world will turn the corner to 5G advanced.
Hmm.
And I'll explain in a second what that really means. From a fixed line perspective, and we saw that in the pandemic, let's take India as an example. It's quite common to have more than one connection at home. Almost everybody's upgrading that connection to gig and beyond. So that's just regular evolution of tech, let's just say, from a last mile perspective. 5G Advanced then offers a lot more option and opportunity to address more than the consumer, right? So far, 5G in India, for example, is mostly consumer driven, but it starts to offer a lot of opportunity. For example, side link, red cap, these
Yep.
features. Uh, I mean, for example, this device that you're all wearing would love to have 5G advanced features and so on and so forth. Um, on the fixed side, it is really about multimodal fibers. It's about, more robust connections to the home. But this is just around the corner. This is just regular evolution. This is already on the roadmap, so to say.
Hmm.
Then what we research on, and research is a little bit more ambiguous, because you start to look at a much wider, your screen is much wider, and then you select parts that you want to focus on. We've talked about some of those, pervasive AI, cloud compute. But then from a pure connectivity standpoint, you also start to see that, and there's a big debate in the industry, when will 6G arrive? And will 6G be needed? I'm sure in your conversations, Neil, you have had those with your clientele as well, and NASCOM probably thinks about that as well in different ways. My view is very simple. The world will need 6G. If you look at traffic growth of 20 to 25%, at some point you will need something with more spectrum and higher spectral efficiency.
Yep.
So if there's more immersive use of networks, we will need 6G. And so not around the corner, but towards the end of the decade, we start to get into the era of 6G. We start to get into the era of possibly 100 gig PON. We start to get into the era of edge computing. And this edge is important to define. This edge computing is not driven by the classic uh, telco. This edge is defined by the classic enterprise. For example, at Nokia, I have the responsibility for our digital efforts and IT efforts as well. I don't mean to put my edge on some of my workloads 300 miles away. I'll put it right next to where I need it, on the factory floor.
Yeah.
So my belief is that by the end of the decade, there will be huge amount of edge compute. A lot of workloads that we are today used to that go to the cloud and come back will stay on the edge. So these things I see will become commonplace by then.
And we'll come to 60 in a second, but let me jump to the next question. And I think I've heard you say, and I forget where, but I'll quote you saying, our tech stacks are complex, and that makes us very slow. It is now time for us to simplify. Elaborate on a bit on why and how this is a must do for driving innovation, both putting on your Nokia strategy hat, but also putting on the hat from a strategic standpoint for the telecom industry in general.
So let's say in 7 years from now, every operator is then not just monetizing that network through subscriptions, they're also doing it through API calls that enterprises use. Every slice is orchestrated at this time. The network is clearly becoming more than just one. Would you put several networks, or would you create one simplified layer that you can offer to multiple? And I think that simplification is what we talk about. It's a very high level generic term, but every operator, and it resonates with every customer I talk about
Yeah.
this with. And they say, yeah, actually, When we started offering IoT, we put a different core just because we didn't want to impact our consumer core. Is it time to reconcile a little bit?
Yeah.
Yes.
So what you're saying is that the immediate benefit obviously is cost to serve, but I think it helps drive eventually an ability to drive and improve new product introduction, maybe even rolling out and onboarding customers faster, sooner, and as we move forward from an innovation angle and a time to market angle, right?
Time to market and innovation. You got it.
Got it. Super. So, I guess when you're trying to advance the tech narrative, right, I'm assuming that there is a large focus you want to build in and not trying to solve for everything and to drive partnerships, right? Do you see that as a value added play, and maybe give us a couple of examples of a successful partnership from a Nokia lens that you think are worthy to at
Yeah.
least outline?
It's this one is a very good point, and it's just not the partnerships that we aspire to. I think the entire tech world, whether it's telco, whether it's traditional software, whether it's silicon, partnerships are the way to go because none of us can afford
Yeah.
to have a fixed cost that spans everything. So there are some very very obvious partnerships. I source my silicon from top silicon companies in the world. The foundry sits somewhere else. The substrate comes from these are supply chain
Yeah.
partnerships that they exist, right? And you can't survive without them. If you go back, by the way, 30 years, a telecom OEM would even make their own screws that would go in the base station.
Yeah.
I don't think we do that anymore, right? So, but those are traditional supply chain core competence definitions and where you want to play and where you can't because the fixed cost in each component goes up now. But then there are partnerships for market addressal. We are, from Nokia's perspective, very dependent on the service provider market, for example. Uh, North of 80% of our top line comes from service provider. We want to expand in the enterprise, traditional enterprise, which is trillions of dollars where we have limited channel presence. We announced a partnership with Dell, and we're a market leader today in private wireless, which is a nascent industry, but growing 40%.
Yeah.
Can I get access to that market through somebody already who has a fantastic channel into that market, and is there complementarity around our partnership? So we announced that partnership with Dell, and uh, that's an example of where we can sort of you know use our product for something that is not today as widely used. Then there's a partnership for innovation. We announced a partnership, for example, here in India with Indian Institute of Sciences, and they're helping us look at Indian use cases. They're helping us look at what can we do in terms of automation for 6G and so on and so forth together. So it is very clear. It is now a core competence of good companies if they can have good collaborations and partnerships.
Super. Got it. Got it. You and I were talking before we started this about this report that BCG and NASSCOM did called Vision 2030. Interestingly enough, the five mega trends that we highlighted in that report, and you touched upon a few of them in the way you think of it, right, are around digital engineering, around generative AI, around sustainability, the population and talent inversion, in general, right? As a business leader who drives broadly strategy and research, right, for Nokia, what do you think are the possible um, additional contributions you're looking at it from an India lens? You have a very large, India is an important market for you, both commercially and otherwise. But when you look at the mega trends that you think of, or that you and I discussed earlier, where is more room for India to play from a Nokia lens?
Yeah, and we had a good debate about this offline as well. I mean, I get asked this question: what more can you do in India? India is the largest service ops country we have. It's one of the largest manufacturing locations we have. Okay, good. It's also the largest R&D locations we have between Bangalore, Noida, Gurgaon. So we have done a lot. And to me, now where India has proven its mettle in terms of talent and accessibility, is the top of pyramid.
Yeah.
And over the years, I have learned that it's not just about offshoring for a cost arbitrage, which I think at Nokia we've done very well. Can we continue to do more of it? Yes. And that's why the Indian centers continue to grow in certain domains, because there is a certain cost arbitrage. Everybody wants the great talent and a cheaper cost. Uh, but at the top of the pyramid, the talent is amazing. And there's a lot of Indian students coming out of top schools, tier two schools, who want to stay in India now. From my perspective, I want Nokia to offer that opportunity to that top talent.
Super, super. One of the other megatrends I mentioned is sustainability, right? And obviously, the history of humanity's progress is tied, very directly and distinctly to our sustainability goals and our path in general to a net zero environment, right? From a landscape of new energy, and you talked about silicon and talked about the consumption and Gen AI and cloud compute, etc. What kind of investments and approaches to innovation are tied to being able to yet do it in a sustainable fashion, bringing us closer to making the planet a more ready place to reckon and live with, from a path to net zero.
So I think there's a supply side, there's a demand side, and
Yeah.
there's an impact side. It's important we triangulate this. We are the demand side. That's when we use diesel, we use other sources of energy. Our primary role as an innovator in the telecom industry is to reduce that demand. It's not easy. We have reduced the demand per bit quite significantly, massively. Per bit energy goes down from 2019, when the first 5G network was rolled, to 2029, when the first 6G network is forecasted to be rolled out. If we meet our targets, we would have dropped the cost of energy per bit to 2% of what it was in the decade. If we meet our targets, and they're
Yeah.
not easy to meet. So, on a system level, we are responsible to make that effort. That's the demand side. There is the supply side. A lot of the base stations versus 10 years ago in India, which were diesel powered, are now using renewable sources of energy. That is also our responsibility to allow that innovation on supply side. And both of them we own. There is an impact side, and we actually call this our handprint.
Yeah.
Not our footprint. Our footprint is the demand side.
Correct.
A handprint is when an industry, let's take an example of a mine that gets 35% productivity and efficiency increase because they're using our tech. Suddenly their footprint drops by a third because of the tech we produced. That's our impact. And we have started to measure this now, actually. Quite actually in a very meticulous way. Because we've been measuring and saying, how can we get the demand down? How can we get less cost of energy per bit? How can we get more renewable sources of energy? But our impact is very important now, because there's tons of industry out there using our tech. If we can deploy that tech in a more efficient way for them, food processing, one of the largest consumers of energy in the world, can we help them be more efficient with that tech? That's our handprint.
Got it. Maybe let's delve into a specific set of use cases, right? There is this tagline I saw about R&D in particular for Nokia, right? I think it says in India for India and the world is the tagline, right? So when you look at the journey that Nokia has been on from a delivery as well as from a research standpoint in India, right? From moving from executing specific tasks to driving, clear innovations, what are the R&D centric innovations that the India set of Nokia folks are truly leading now? And where do you think some of the other areas they might want to, or you foresee them taking a lead role in going forward?
Almost all of our portfolio has some presence of R&D in India.
Yeah.
Now, that's on the product side. That's on the design side. And I talked about this earlier. The top of the pyramid sits with the research side. Can we get more of standardization? Can we get more of top-end Bell Labs research here? And offer those opportunities to the top talent here in India. Great talent, good cost arbitrage, great comms networks, works very efficiently. People have gotten used to it. But moving top-end research here, I would like to pioneer that. I think we can
Super.
do that.
Yeah. I'm getting cues that we need to wrap up soon, so I'll try and keep a few questions and maybe request for some brief answers. Right? You've mentioned 6G, right? What are the plans for Nokia from a 6G angle? How are things going? I know there's a 6G lab that's been set up in India. How is that coming along? Maybe a brief bite in that.
60 Lab is up and set up. We visited IISc 2 weeks ago. The partnership is fantastic there. Uh, love the progress. 6G around the world, ITU conference in December. We have the spectrum ready to be studied. It's a long journey. Now we're going to start conceptual research, or we have started conceptual research. Standardization starts in a couple of years. Spectrum to be allocated in 27, and the networks to be rolled out by the end of the decade. I think we're going to meet the timeline. It's not easy.
Super. That sounds very exciting. A similar, very quick comment, and we've touched upon, and I know no conversation today is complete without Gen AI, right? So from a lens of how Nokia develops its products and services, both from mobile networks, cloud and network services, infra, what's the adoption and the future of Gen AI? Do we think we have just scratched the surface? Are we really far along? A quick bite in that too, please.
From an R&D perspective, uh, we are already in thousands when we are now actually moving from trial to actual use of code assistants.
Hmm.
And I'm very happy with the early speed we have picked up in the space. On the Gen AI for our customers, I think it's every product now is looking at how to get this uh, language interpretation into some of our products, and the natural language interface, because of what I talked about, ease of operations, etc.
I would be remiss if I didn't get you to opine more broadly on the commercial side of the market as well, right? What's your view in general about the India telecom market from a commercial lens?
It's I mean, the market really peaked at the peak of the 5G rollout for us now, and of course the market's since then slowed down. We are number one in wireless, number one in optics, number one in core in the market. It's a very, very important market for us. It's a top three perpetually. So I'm confident it will stay good for us.
Super. Let me end our podcast with a rapid fire, maybe a fun fact, kind of one word, quick answer, Nishant, right? Favorite country to visit excluding India?
Austria,
Austria. Okay, wonderful. Favorite food to eat?
South Indian food,
South Indian food.
dosa,
Dosa. Super. Um, and a favorite sport you follow?
cricket.
Oh, wow. Still a cricket buff, huh?
I was at the
Super.
India-Pakistan game in New York with
Oh,
my dad.
awesome. Awesome. Look, Nishant, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I want to wish you and the Nokia team the very best in the innovation journey as you move forward. Thank you for being with us and great to meet you.
Same. Thank you, Evan.
Thank you.